Welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Bible Study. In this series of Bible studies, we'll be taking a closer look at the Bible's evidence for the completion of the prolonged Judgment Day and the end of the world occurring in the year 2033. And now here's your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann.
Hello and welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Bible Study in our series looking into the biblical evidence for the end of the world in 2033. This is study number 18, and we have been discussing Isaiah 46, 9 and 10, where God tells us he declares the end from the beginning. And so we're going to start looking at a couple of timelines or time paths, biblical evidence, biblical information that starts at the beginning. We're going to see how God uses the creation date itself as a grounding point to lead us and direct us to other major milestones in biblical history. And then we'll project that into the future, into our day, and you guessed it, to the year 2033. And we'll see how it fits, it matches, it follows the exact pattern that the Lord has used in past time regarding major historical milestones or major historical events. And, that is not a little thing. In other words, what we'll lay out and we'll show you, based on the biblical calendar of history, we have the date for creation, 11,013 BC. And we'll show you with that starting point that God is keeping track of time, and he went from there to the flood in a very precise way and brought a flood destruction upon the earth. And also from the flood, then we have another extremely important date. We could go to probably one of the most critical dates in all of history, the cross of Christ. And we find not just some random number, but we find, again, a number that is precise, a number that fits a pattern. And we will project from creation to 2033. We'll project from the flood to 2033. We'll project from the cross to 2033. And we'll see 2033 is fully in line. It is in agreement with the pattern that has come before. Now, just consider that when we look at these time paths that have already taken place, that have already occurred, and we know from the biblical account they came to pass, and that is precedent. You understand, in law, in the legal system, lawyers and judges are always interested in legal precedent. Has there ever been a ruling like this before? Is there anything that could allow us to rule in this way? Is there any precedent in case history? And a lot of time, lawyers or they have staff that are searching legal documents from decades in the past and sometimes even centuries into the past, trying to find precedent and so they can build their case upon something that has happened before. Well, there is also biblical precedent, and especially with God's timetable for history. And it's one of the reasons why he has uncovered the biblical calendar of history, which is derived mainly from the genealogies in Genesis 5 and chapters 10 and 11, that we can lay out a timeline. We can lay out the creation date. We can lay out the flood date. We can lay out the date Christ went to the cross, and many other connecting dates or interval dates in periods in between, where we know that this happened in the lifespan of this individual. For instance, the flood. Why does God say the flood took place in the 600th year of Noah? Let's go back there to Genesis chapter 7. Genesis 7, and we'll see a calendar reference. And no, it's not a reference as we have today. You know, we say it's the year 2023, and that is presupposing that Christ was born in the year 0. It's 2023 AD, Anno Domini, which is Latin for year of our Lord. Of course, there was no year 0. There was a mistake in the calendar, and even more than that, Christ would have not been born in the year 0. He was actually born in 7 BC. And we can know that because Herod, that evil man who heard the word from the wise men concerning the birth of the King of the Jews, and told them, well, go find him, and when you found him, come back and tell me, because I want to worship him too. But he really wanted to kill him. And so Herod, when the wise men did not return, he sent his soldiers to kill all the children 2 years and younger, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. And so we know Herod was alive at the time of Christ's birth. And actually, when the wise men came and they went to Bethlehem and found the child, they did not find a little baby, but they found a young child. If we go to Matthew 2, we read in verse 7, then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. Notice, they don't find Mary in the stall with the animals, but in a house. And it's not a baby. God could have said where the baby was, or they went into the house and saw the baby with Mary his mother, but the young child, the child Jesus is a toddler, maybe 2-3 years old. Well, anyway, Herod, he ascertained from the wise men when they saw the star, and then he orders children 2 years and under to be killed. So, here's the point. Herod died, according to, we would say, reliable secular sources, because it agrees with the Bible or the biblical account. Herod died in 4 BC. He died before the year 0, 4 BC. BC is supposed to stand for before Christ. And so that is inaccurate. He did not die 4 years before Christ, because Christ was born. And Christ was a young child when the wise men came. and it probably dates back to the 2 years earlier when they saw the star. He more than likely is a 2-year-old. And so that means that if Herod died in 4 BC, they saw the star 2 years earlier, then at least Jesus would have had to have been born by 6 BC. But we shouldn't think that Herod died immediately. He sent the soldiers and they failed to kill the child, but he didn't know. He just killed all the children, probably hoping and figuring. He certainly killed the one born king of the Jews because all the children were dead, but God had warned Joseph, and he took his family to Egypt, and Christ was not slain, of course. But when we examine all the biblical evidence, and we don't just do that for the year 2033, we do it for every doctrine. We want to be as careful as possible and as diligent in study as possible. We find that 7 BC was the perfect year for the birth of Christ because it was a Jubilee year. It was a Jubilee year, and a Jubilee year was commanded by God, and you can read about it in Leviticus 25. It was to come about every 50 years. And in the Jubilee year, I'll just read this verse that really lays it out as far as the purpose of a Jubilee and the essence of a Jubilee. In Leviticus 25, it says in verses 9 and 10, "Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land, and unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family." The Jubilee year was a time of liberty, the proclamation of liberty to the captives. They were to be set free, set them free. And we can see how Jesus is the essence of the Jubilee. He is the one who came to set sinful captives to sin and to Satan free. Just compare Isaiah 61 in verse 1, where it says, "The Spirit of the Lord Jehovah is upon me, because Jehovah hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of Jehovah." That is the Jubilee. And that, when Jesus finally does enter into the world and go about his ministry, he goes into the temple and he reads this passage from the book of Isaiah. You can read that in Luke chapter 4. That he has come to open the prison, not literal prisons, but the spiritual prison, the spiritual dungeon that man is in since the fall. He's captive to his own lusts, his own sinful desires. He's in the dark dungeon of Satan's kingdom. And Christ comes with the gospel, with the word of God. And in the day of salvation, which sadly is now past, but in the day of salvation, he set the captives free. And that's why Jesus said in John 8, verse 32, he said, "And ye shall know the truth." And who's the truth? Christ himself. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Now the Jews didn't understand that. We be Abraham's seed. We've never been in bondage to any man. They're thinking naturally. rather than spiritually. And the Bible's a spiritual book. Yes, you may be very well freeborn as far as your place in this world. You're not a slave, as numbers of people have been slaves throughout history, and you can thank God that you have not been born a slave, that you're born a free man, and you can go and come as you please. Yes, physically, that's so, but not spiritually. If you are not saved, then you are a captive. You are bound with the cords of your own iniquity. Sin has a grip on you, and if you don't think so, try to stop drinking. Try to stop smoking. Try to stop lying or stealing or cursing or whatever your particular sin weakness happens to be. And then you'll see the power of that sin. Some people, it's only after their lives have been ruined. They've lost wives and families and jobs, and they've had DUIs and all kinds of awful things have happened to them, and then their bodies are almost shot. They're 50, 60 years old, and finally, with much effort, with a sponsor and going to meetings and having constant encouragement from others, maybe they're able to get away from booze for a few days or a couple of years. And with all force of willpower, they can turn from that. But you know what you'll find if you go to these meetings and you find someone and, I've been sober 10 years, I've been sober 15 years, that, okay, again, through much strength of will and help with others, they have been able to get away from that one sin. And typically, sin will just break out in another area of their life. Satan or sin that dictates to the sinner, you must serve me, you must please me, you must fulfill my desire, you must fulfill my lust. Sin itself is not all that concerned if someone finally is able to get away and to stop serving it in one area. We'll come over here. We'll come over here, and they're smoking cigarettes like a fiend, one after the other. Or we'll come over here, and all of a sudden you see those people who are, putting quotes, sober, and they're running around, sexually trying to live out sinful desires in that way. There's no victory over sin for the sinner except in Christ. Except in Christ, who sets the captive free. If the Son of Man shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. And so that's what Christ, who's the essence of the Jubilee, came to do. Proclaim liberty to the captives, but only those captives that he has chosen to be liberated. The elect of God, predestinated before the foundation of the world, to obtain that marvelous freedom of God's salvation by his grace. And so the Jubilee year is perfect, and especially since we know Herod died in 4 BC. 2 years, according to the wise men, takes us to 6 BC. Well, obviously, it's obvious. And then when we see the biblical calendar will focus on that year 7 BC with a certain time pass, it just locks it in. It locks it in. And we can see that history is according to calendar. And we've lived our whole lives according to calendars, haven't we? Again, the year 2023. We also live our whole lives according to time, which is, it's just fascinating that the church tells us, do not look into time when it comes to the coming of Christ. Don't look into time. No man knows a day or hour. And they dissuade us. They try to get us away from that topic, as much as they can. Don't talk about this. And yet, when you think of their church as well as the world, we see everything I would say operates according to a timetable. Everything. For instance, when we work, do you just go into work any old time? Well, maybe there's a privileged person out there, self-employed. Yeah, you could say that. But for most, no, the boss tells you, I want you here at 7 or 8 or 9. And while we're there, you work so many hours, time for lunch. And go back to work. Work day is over. The time for the finish of the workday has come. So you go home. And there's numbers of people. They catch buses or trains to get home. And they know the time the train is coming because there's a schedule. There's a schedule. The bus will be at this stop at this time. The train will be at that station at this time. And if the train is late or the bus is late, people get upset. They don't like their schedules upset. They don't like the idea of something not being according to time. And it's everything. How old are you? How many times have people asked you that? How old are you? Do you know? Well, yes, sure you do. You do. And you'll say, well, I'm 30 or 40 or 50. You know the year you were born? Do you know the month? Yes. Do you know the day? Yes. You could even know the hour if you wanted to find out that information. You know precisely when you began. And you know how long you've worked at the place you've worked. And there's always these time milestones. Oh, you're here 10 years. Let's have a party. You're here 20 years. Here's a watch. You're here 30 years. And we know we retire according to time. When you hit, it varies now, but 62, 65, 67, and you can retire at these ages. When you get married, you know the anniversary date, or you better. And, I've been married 5 years today. I've been married 20 years and married 30 years. We keep track of time in everything. Everything you can think of. Going to school, you get up. You have to be at class. The class is a certain time. You break. You have to be at the next class by another specified time. The age for going to school, you have to be a certain age, which means you had to go through a certain amount of time in your life to reach that age. And you can start school in kindergarten, and then you go on to high school, and then you go on to college. Same thing, time schedule. And everything in the world is according to time. And the church that tells us, don't be interested in time. Don't be interested in time and judgment. It's not for us to know. The same church has a cornerstone in front of its building. The year it began, 1948. And they can tell you that they have a series of portraits. Can't remember now, but on their walls, they have the portraits of their pastors and the time that they served. And I used to go to 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, and they were all their pastors had B last names, and here's Pastor Boyce, and he began his ministry this year. He ended his ministry that year. Oh, they know the time, all right. They know the time for everything except the most important thing. For that, they declare ignorance. They declare ignorance a good thing. Oh, don't be interested in that. you can't know that. You don't want to know that. Oh, yes, we do. We're creatures of time. We want to know everything about time. It helps us. You can't go to work not knowing when you're going to get off work. You just work and work and work, and you don't know the hour you're going to stop working. No, we need time. Time is structure for us. Time helps us to live life in this world, and time will help us to live until this world comes to its end date, to its close, and we can see it, we can sense it. We know, even the unsaved people of the world sense something seriously wrong has happened. Something seriously wrong is going on in the world. That they are disturbed, they are unnerved and anxious and fearful because they can see the troubling of the earth. Things are not as they were, not as they've ever been before. When in history have men married men and women married women? When in history have people who are men thought they're women and people who are women thought they're men? Okay, yes, maybe you could find a rare exception of an individual, but where in history or when in history have nations gotten behind these things and pushed them? No, something is odd. Something is way off. Way, way off. What could it be? And the Bible has the answer and the timing for what is happening.
Thank you for joining us for eBible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. For more studies and information, visit our website at www.ebiblefellowship.org. Until our next Bible study, may the Lord's perfect will be done.